Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 23 of the Whitey and Wils Sports Show. Today is Sunday, February 20th, and we've got us a guest. We've got another guest in studio, in the Wilson family studio, a guy that if you don't recognize the face, once you hear the voice, you're going to know right away. Matt Robinson, nice enough to make the trip over to Effingham to record with Mike tonight. Matt, thanks for coming on.
My pleasure to be on with you. You guys have been doing a great job with this podcast. Been with you since podcast number 1.
And
he's one of our 70 subscribers, Whitey.
I'll bet. You know, we're moving on up in the world. We're going to get to triple digits if it takes 2 years to do it. But then once we do that,
this one tonight might send you there.
Well, you joke, but every time we have a guest on, that pumps the numbers up.
Well, I'm guessing your wife's going to subscribe, your 2 kids, huh?
Yeah.
I wouldn't bet on that.
Oh, no. Hey, we can take that Attaboy back from your son.
I'm guessing.
I don't think you can. I think it's already been turned in.
So, Matt's nice enough to join us. You know, we're gonna talk a little bit of broadcasting stuff, I think, but then also it's regional and sectional time. Sectionals for the girls basketball are coming up this week, and boys basketball regionals have already started, but they're really going to get going in earnest this week. And so he's a guy who's going to be making some trips this week, as we all are, to see some games. And so we're going to talk about it, but I don't know. As usual, we don't have a plan here, but I think we'll start with some broader stuff first.
Plan's all up here, Dustin.
Yeah. Matt, how long? Now let's properly introduce you. I find that I don't do this enough, but Matt is one of the voices of the morning show, first of all, on Premier Broadcasting, but for a longer time, you hear sports on the radio on 97.9 or 102.3, and Matt Robinson's one of those voices that you hear all the time. And you've been at this for quite a while, and not just with Premier Broadcasting, right?
We actually kind of a couple of years ago went back and tried to narrow down when exactly the first broadcast was. I remembered it was a consolation game of the National Trail Conference tournament, and it was a fluke. I was there, and I was standing behind the crow's nest, probably just came out of the concession stand, most likely.
Bag of popcorn in this
And we started broadcasting games when that all got started. And there was some sort of miscommunication between him and his partner as to who was doing games, and he didn't have anybody there to help him with that broadcast for that afternoon session. So he turned around with about 3 or 4 minutes left to go before the game. He goes, "Hey, you want to sit down and help me with this?" Sure. So that's what I did. He had no idea that I had worked at the radio station in Effingham, finishing out my high school, and then while I was at Lakeland, I worked there on weekends and did stuff like that. He didn't know that.
At XCF or the other one?
No, it was CRC.
Oh.
And did that. It was before XCF started.
Oh, okay.
Some people think I might have drove.
So Larry Wilson had to prove your hire.
Larry Wilson called the house after I turned my application in, and my mom had answered the phone, and she said, "Yes, he's here." And she turned, covered up the receiver, and was like, "It's Larry Wilson." And I'm sure he had introduced himself, but he didn't need to. She would have known exactly who he was. And he actually hired me and then promptly left.
Yeah. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. And
great person.
So, but yeah, that's how it got started, was a broadcast, and we narrowed it down to 1996.
So this is kind of Gobby's fault.
It is. It really is.
Okay.
I did the games with him that day. During the first quarter, he didn't have a book filled out or anything. So while the game was going on, I was filling out the book while trying to keep stats, and so I didn't really say much. I just, there wasn't a chance to. And at the quarter break, I remember he told me, he goes, "No, don't worry about it. Talking on the radio is just like talking in real life. Just, And I said, yeah, I've been on the radio for 3 years. And so he goes, oh. And so that's how we got started. After the games, he called me either the following day on Sunday or Monday and said, hey, would you like to come by the office? We'd like to offer you a job announcing some games with us. And so I finished out that season announcing some of the games. They'd followed. I know they were following Totopolis at the time, and they also had following Altamont at the time. And so I filled in whatever. And then the following year, I was kind of a part of the team more. And then I did games with them. Then I did games with Mark Turner at CRC. And then Mark left, and that turned it over to me to do games on 98.9 and
So that's when you started doing play-by-play.
that's really when I started to do more play-by-play. I did play-by-play with they were known as Double Q 98.9 at the time. A matter of fact, Leon, with his son playing, opted out of the games in the postseason, and that allowed me to announce their run to the
So you
postseason.
gotta go to state.
Yeah, I went to state with those guys, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Right.
And yeah, I was calling play-by-play of the state tournament game when I was 21, 22.
So you were broadcasting games involving my former babysitter, Mitch Kester.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, his claim to fame really is not coaching or playing at Purdue. It's babysitting the Wilson kids.
Well,
Most people don't know that.
I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah, see, you never know.
My wife mentions having to watch your kids at morning playground at the Park District once upon a time.
Probably angelic is a word she would use.
I don't believe for your son that was the word she used, actually.
Or kids in Nashville can't even defend himself.
No.
He was almost as big as Mitch back then. Actually, Mitch's current wife, his wife Megan, is my wife's niece. So Megan was the real babysitter, and it was amazing how many times Mitch came in tow to help babysit.
I'm shocked to find out that we talk about someone here and then find out that there's some family connection between you and Mike. Seems like a common theme.
We may have lost our opportunity now to have him as a guest, but we'll mend fences.
So Matt, something we talked about, and if you watch, so I'm sure you heard us talking about this, but and I know you don't like to make a big deal out of it when you're on the air, but your son is in high school, Mason, and not only does he play, but he's a good player. I mean, a very, very strong player for Altamont in baseball and basketball. And you do the games, and the compliment that I hear all the time from people is that they would never know. And I'm just curious because, I've called games I call Neoga games, for instance, and listen, somewhere deep down in here, as impartial as I'm being on the air, where your heart's at. But you can be a professional and keep it under wraps. But I have to think that is just 1,000 times harder when it's your own kid. But you do it, and I'm just curious, how is it that difficult, or do you just get in the zone of the game and it doesn't really enter into your mind?
Well, it enters into your mind. I can't deny that. I think it would be extremely difficult if this was the first, second, third year that I'd been announcing. And I think it helps that like I said, I don't know how many years it is, go back to 96, do the math, whatever you want to do. But yeah, it's, if it was year 1, 2, or 3, it would be a little more difficult. And I got broke into it with baseball. When we did start to do baseball games more, we've done more games in the spring and fall. And Mason was playing as a freshman. We did a few Altamont games. Baseball is different. It's slower. You have, as far as, not the immediate reactions that you have to say or whatever. And so I think that helped break me into it. And then basketball wise, really this year is the first year that he was playing a bunch of varsity minutes that we were broadcasting games. And obviously the NTC tournament is big games. And now we're getting to the postseason, which is big games. And it's there, but that's what my goal is that if you're a casual fan that just happens to turn on the radio, you wouldn't know. I'm trying to do that. I hope I'm doing that. I've told people around me, if I'm not, you have to let me know, because I will bow out of a broadcast if it's an evident factor, or if it's something that's, that I should be letting someone else do.
I've done 2 Altamont games with you this year. One they won in a real close game, one they lost in a real close game. And well, we talked about it after the game down in North Clay, and I even told you, I said, I was impressed. I don't think you can tell. I really don't, unless you knew. And you were kind of giving him some accolades. You forgot to mention he's been an Attaboy of the week, probably the most important thing he's done this year.
I mean, it's just that I've been not quite as long, but I've been going to high school games and watching as an impartial observer for quite a while now too. And the thing that I always take away from these games is that fans, and especially parents, see these games through a different lens than we do. And so I just, and my kids aren't quite old enough yet, although my daughter is starting to get to where she's playing. And I try to keep a level head when I'm watching, but she's also only 9, so the stakes are not high yet. But I do feel like it just would be, people have a hard time turning that off. So I think it's a bigger challenge than you're letting on. But again, you do a good job of it.
Well, thank you. It's easier to do play-by-play from the games that I've done, both play-by-play and color now this year. It seems to be a little easier for me to do play-by-play. I have to follow the ball. I have to say what's going on. I can't watch off the ball what Mason is doing. I can say in the NCC championship game, when that game was coming down in the 4th quarter, Craig Croy had started to score a bunch, and they switched Mason onto him. I did get caught watching Mason and Croy kind of maneuver around the court without the ball. But I honestly can't say that I wouldn't have done that if it would have been another kid guarding Croy, because it was important at that time. Croy had gotten hot, hit 3 or 4 shots. And so I don't know. I wondered about that too, but I do remember thinking, I don't know who shot that ball. I don't know who rebounded it, because I was watching actually Croy and Mason. And so that's the one time I can remember that could have happened. But I don't know. I mean, after all these years as a fan, I sit in the stands, and if I'm at a game, typically it's an Altamont game, if I'm not broadcasting it. And you mentioned you see it through that lens of the parent or fan. When I watch the game, sometimes it's like, well, yeah, Altamont fouled, and the rest of the crowd is crazy, So I don't know. I think I attribute that to all the years of broadcasting too, and we've always had the basically neutral approach because we cover so many area teams, and I think that's a factor in it as well.
Yeah, you become impartial, and you don't become that that fan. I mean, and that's the thing. People don't realize when you're doing stats, probably other than Whitey, how many times your head is down, and you're relying on the play person to tell you who just got that rebound or who just got that putback, especially when there's the volleyball trip where there's about 5 shots going up and down, and now Whitey doesn't have that issue, but I know mortals have that issue.
No, it happens for sure. You rely a lot. You rely a lot on the play-by-play to keep those things accurate. But I've gotten to the point now where I do understand people are listening, they're not watching. So if I get a couple things wrong, it's not the end of the world.
No. And it's usually rebounds.
Yeah.
Well, and Dustin actually keeps more stats than anybody while doing a radio broadcast, and kudos to him with that. So yeah, I mean, I strive to be accurate, and sometimes to a fault, like what Dustin kind of mentioned there too. But I've got an uncle who can listen to a ball game, and then he can say, well, I counted up that this kid had 7 rebounds, not 8. I mean, he's that smart. And so I want to be as accurate as I can be. And,
That's when you blame the play-by-play.
Well, and Yeah, and that's why you can blame me for that when you're doing stats with me. I that's the big thing with me. I try to be as accurate as possible, but I mean, everybody makes mistakes.
This time of year is a lot of fun, I think. Having been with you guys for several years now, I know that maybe my wife doesn't necessarily agree with me whenever I'm telling her, "Hey, I'm going to be out 4 nights this week." With our area, the number of teams that we cover, and then just the success that some of the programs around here have on a year-to-year basis, this is when it gets great. The quality of the games and the atmosphere in those gyms, this is a whole lot of fun to start following teams to regional championships, to sectional games, and it's a rush to be a part of that in some small way.
The atmosphere in a regional championship is special, but it doesn't match the atmosphere of a sectional championship. It's like, I know it's the next step, but it's really ratcheted up. But I don't know that it holds true, because when you get to super sectional, usually the venue is bigger, and it's just, it's hard to get noise. Carbondale's arena for a high school super sectional, that's a great place to play, but it doesn't get crazy noisy like a sectional one, because it's such a big venue. And you don't, you're at 50% capacity, if that.
I think the matchups dictate some of that too, as far as the regional sectional matchups, but you're right, the venue plays a factor. You're going to have some regional championships played in relatively small gymnasiums. You're going to have some that are played in pretty good size one. It just depends on who's hosting and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think the matchups dictate a lot of that. Dustin, you mentioned it's being fun. It is fun, and it's a great opportunity for us to tag along in a sense with some of these successful programs. And but at the same time, you're excited about a game, you're excited about what's happening, but it can end that night. And obviously it does at some point in time, and only a couple of teams are happy when at the end of the season with their last game. So
and that's Greg and I talked about that pregame yesterday. Yeah, yesterday is the finality, and being there as a coach, and I've seen last games, sections, super sections, and I think I've only seen one senior in all of those years not shedding tears after their last game. One kid.
Yeah,
But it is. And yesterday when Josh Zink called a timeout with about 30 seconds to go, and he'd had some of the seniors don't play a lot. He had all 5 of them at the time on the floor, kind of finishing it out because it had become inevitable. Dietrich was making free throws, and I think they had to leave it. And to see the raw emotion when those kids came off the floor, and this is a team that was hovering around 500. Think about that team that's got one loss and gets knocked off in a regional final in what people consider an upset, how they feel, or gutted. Or you have a game that goes down to I've been in super sectionals. I've been in sectionals where buzzer beat went to the buzzer. It guts you, and it's tough on the kids.
Well, and these kids have no concept, because you can't have the mental mindset of our season might end tonight. You're not thinking that way at any way, shape, or form. And then no matter how it ends, I mean, if it's a buzzer beater that you get beat on, that's obviously gut wrenching, but it also, can cause, even if you get blown out and you feel like, well, you didn't play your best, you didn't put forth a good effort, that's gut wrenching too. And so we see both sides of it, but there's a line out there. The next best thing to playing and winning is playing and losing. Be in that game.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't have given anything up to as a head coach, only getting the sectional finals. On the bench, sat on the bench for 4 straight super sectional finals, 4 straight, that were all, with the exception of 2.5 of them were nailed. two of them at the buzzer,
Yeah.
literally at the buzzer,
Mhm.
both of them. And it's just, that's one of the hardest things for our coaches to do is walk into that locker room after that game. It really is.
Well,
Because you've dealt with these kids 4 years, 3 years, maybe 2 since they've been on varsity. The amount of time you spend with them in practice, riding buses, going out and eating. I mean, just your family, and then to know that some of your family will never be together again.
well, and the coaches probably understand it better than the players because, like Matt said, the players don't have that perspective yet. The coach has been through it every year, and they know it's coming, but it doesn't make it any easier to deal with. The kids don't really wrap their minds around it until it's actually over, and they have to, they're confronted with the fact that, you're never going to play with these guys again. And I remember what that was like, not with basketball, but with baseball. I remember when we lost our regional championship game my senior season in baseball, there were 9 or 10 seniors on that team, and you don't really think about it, but you're like, I'll never play ball with any of these guys again. And it's you spend your whole life doing it, so it's a very strange thing for a 17 or 18-year-old to start thinking about.
And that's kind of why I feel blessed that I've been able to continue my athletic career, which was minimal at best. And I get the chance to be around these kids. It's something new every year, and it is. Kids seem more and more, I guess, open, willing to talk to me or Greg and you guys too. I don't know if you guys noticed that, and maybe it's me growing up and maturing as with announcing over the years as well. But the kids seem more willing and open to talk and just say hi and that sort of thing. And every group's different, but I appreciate that. And then the coaches and other media people that I've gotten to know and at least be able to say hi to and talk with, and I really appreciate those relationships. So in a way, like I said, this being around the game still is been a very important blessing to me, and I couldn't do it without. My wife has been extremely understanding through all these years. Ann has just been wonderful, whether it's watching the kids, or she'll take care of chores at home, which is no fun as when I have to leave early and that sort of stuff. So she's been great with that throughout the years. And Molly and Mason have dealt with me missing their stuff, whether it be volleyball games that Molly was playing in, cheerleading that she was doing in junior high. And I did miss a lot of Mason's stuff as well in his younger years. So from time to time, I try not to, but so they've made sacrifices with that stuff too, and I really appreciate them doing that.
It is nice when they get old enough to be able to tag along. I remember coming along to games with you, and me being impressed that he was not a distraction for you most of the time. And now, my daughter has started wanting to come along to the games, and we're finally getting to where I don't feel like that's going to be too much of a problem. And that's nice too, because it can be something that you have, it can be something that the two of you have. I think.
Well, it's safer now than riding with Sam and my dad back in the day, because that was educational.
Yeah, I guess that's true. You had the same thing. You had the same thing, maybe a few years earlier than we did, but yeah, you got a chance to tag along to a lot of stuff when you were a kid, right, Mike?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah, and it helps you learn too, right? Like
Well, yeah, and it's kind of funny because of back then there wasn't so many stations doing games. There weren't, okay, we're going to do this game on one station, this on the other. We're splitting up into two teams. You had one group, so it was kind of special when they were able to do your game. And there's more opportunities now to get on the radio per se. But yeah, it was and Dad back then would go to practices, and he'd pick me up after school a lot of times, and I'd go shoot around with the guys before practice would start would be kind of a little pain in the butt in the gym and stuff, but it was really neat.
It is interesting that that he would go to practices.
Oh yeah, he'd go to practices and sit and watch practice, and usually we'd get there right as they're before they're starting, and I can remember playing horse with Bob Walls and Woody Stortson on their team.
Well, I'm trying to think what my wife would say if I was like, during the football season, I'm going to start. I'm going to not only on Friday nights, but I'm going to start going to practice a couple nights a week. First of all, I don't know if a football coach would let you do that. They're pretty hold things close to the vest. But also, yeah, that would be. I don't know. That's a level of commitment I'm not sure I could make.
One thing that was interesting for us with our family dynamic is Mason has always had baseball, basketball. He played soccer for a little bit, with the little kids league, whatever sport was going on that he could get into, he got into. And then he kind of settled with baseball and then basketball. Molly, on the other hand, wasn't as into athletics as much as Mason. So, so we found actually, and I have a competitive spirit, not that I won a lot, but, I like to compete and have fun. And so we found showing cattle as something that Molly and I were able to connect with. And sometimes there were sacrifices that had to be made with that when, I was out doing other stuff with broadcasting and whatever. But she was always good with that too. And so that was it. It's just interesting how you have different kids, different perspectives, what they're into. And I was really happy that through a family member that kind of got us going with the showing of beef cattle, that we were able to do that. Molly and I were able to make kind of that connection there.
So Matt, one last thing before we kind of shift gears, I think, to local basketball this year. And it's kind of putting you on the spot, but I think it's a question you probably get asked a lot. Games you have worked throughout your life, memorable ones. What's one that sticks out when people say, what's a broadcasting experience that was just top of the heap for you? Do you have a go-to answer, or is it more just like, man, I've seen so many good games, I can't answer that question?
That's how it falls for me. There's people who can remember games, like you say, that this is 1, this is 2, this is 3. My games wash together for me in my head. Now, when Mike mentions something about a sectional, I know exactly what game he's talking about. Then I can remember it, that sort of thing. But there was a game that stood out to me when you asked this question, and I'm sure there's lots of them that I'm going to miss. But it was involving that T-Town team when they played Newton, I believe at a sectional final. And I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure it was a sectional final. They played Newton, went into overtime. T-Town won the tap, held the ball for the entire overtime. Newton was playing a zone at the time and didn't score. So we went to the double overtime. T-Town won the jump, held the ball. If I remember right, somewhere under 30 seconds, maybe 14 seconds, they wound up scoring to beat Newton. And that was around the 99, 2000.
Probably Flora, if I'm guessing. I don't know. I don't know. Either Flora or Dietrich is my guess.
Where the game was, you mean?
Yeah.
I would say it probably was Flora. I don't remember it being at Dietrich if it was. But that was with Johnny King, Mitch Custer, Andrew Gobzinski, that group. John Tip, man, they were good.
And pretty salty.
And Newton was good too.
And the Meinhardt kid get hurt.
So, yeah, that does seem to ring a bell. But that was a game that and the way it ended was interesting. T-Town, pretty much knew they were going to win the jump, back when they, and so they knew Newton wanted to play their zone. I believe they were playing a 1-2-2 at the time. And so it was just like, we're going to hold it. We're not going to come out of it. But, there was games, NTC championship games, that I fall back to. Remember Dietrich winning, getting a steal and scoring late against Altamont, and winning that title, and then, obviously St. Anthony's run to state and Drew Gibson getting a shot there, late in that game. That was pretty good. So, but we've had the opportunity to go to state with so many teams.
Mhm.
And sometimes I've actually had to turn down games at state because of conflicts with work either back at the radio station or I only work at the radio station part-time. And so I farm. And so sometimes, especially with baseball getting late, if it's planting season and we need to be in the field, I've had to pass up some of those opportunities, which I regret, but
I
you
don't.
got to do what you got to do. Yeah, Dustin's been able to go.
I got to go to Peoria one time. I were texting you that you were actually planning, I think. And
Oh, yeah.
I was maybe saying that, oh, Matt's not really a farmer, and you were sending me pictures from the tractor. So
Yeah, I got a chance between T-Town and St. Anthony. I think it was like 3 years in a row. Was up at Peoria calling a state championship baseball game. So it's a lot of fun. Yeah, we're kind of spoiled with our stations, really, to get those chances. You hear guys, you see guys when you
Never been.
yeah, when you go to state, you'll go there. And for me, like walking into Redbird Arena for a girls' state tournament, I've been there between T-Town and Cowden Hardwick Major City. Been there a bunch of times, and so it's just like riding a bike. But you
know where you're going. You know what you're doing.
You could tell the
And-
people that are doing it for the first time. It's kind of a nice feeling to just be like, oh, this is
you're like,
this is nothing.
I'm a regular.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing with me. For my ability, or
Right.
it's the
where
area.
you are.
Yeah, and a high tide rises all ships. You see that. I mean, if you want to start talking about this year, my goodness, I wasn't really sure on the boys side of things. I knew the NTC had a lot of good teams, but I really wasn't sure how good, but here late in the season, I think they've proven that they're pretty good, and a lot of good teams.
I still will go on record. You will have a team at the super sectional representing the NTC.
Well, so let's talk about that. Okay, that's a good segue.
You'll start boys or you will start girls?
Well, listen, we've segued into the boys. Let's talk boys, because especially with the NTC was good this year. I mean, you look at their non-conference record. They beat the teams that they played outside of the conference pretty regularly. I think I'm looking at my spreadsheet now, and only one team in the NTC didn't have a winning record in its non-conference schedule, and CHBC was 10-12. So that's a feather in the cap, right? The downside of it is that, of course, we're all close together, and so a bunch of them end up in the same regional, and so they start knocking each other out immediately, and we've already seen that, right? The quarterfinals for the Diederich regional were yesterday, so you see Altamont knocking off CHBC in a pretty convincing fashion. You see Diederich knocking off North Clay, which was in that matchup. And Mike, you were there, and that's one worth talking about, mostly because that game turned out to be a 16-point win for Diederich. And I wouldn't have been surprised with either team winning, but by 16 points was the thing that caught me off guard.
It was very, very similar to the game Matt and I did, Dietrich and Altamont. Dietrich came out they were 7 of 14 on threes in the first half, threw one in at the buzzer each quarter. Now, Moody Kid hit one probably 22 feet. In the half, the other kid in the first quarter. Who's the kid that guarded Mason? Whitey. He was being harassed and almost just kind of threw it up and in. I mean, that's the one that was like, oh, and then boom, it went in. So they're burying threes left and right. North Clay was, I think they hit one. They were like 1 of 12 or 14 for the game from 3, but they hung around. Dietrich finally got the lead up to like 5 or 6 at the half, I think. And, just like when Matt and I did the game, you think, okay, Dietrich is now going to come out and their threes aren't going to fall. They come out and miss 2 quick threes just like that. But North Clay couldn't score. They were getting look after look inside 8 feet and couldn't score. And pretty soon Dietrich got it up to 10. Dietrich got it up to 11. I think it was 10 or 11 mid-third quarter, I'm sorry. And Logan Fleener was like on a pogo stick trying to get a rebound in the middle of the lane and came up. I mean, he was done. Or he went down, and he's there on the stage. Greg and I could have reached over and patted him on the head. He was right there at our table. And it was like the air was let out of the gym a little bit, you know. At that point, they were probably only down 8. So they start making a run. You know, he's behind us on a table. The trainer's retaping him, doing stuff. He tried to play. He was like a pirate on one foot, to be honest. He just was very limited on what he could do. And North Clay, you know, got a steal, an intentional foul on a very cheap play, in my opinion. They made the free throws, cut it to 10. They get the ball out of bounds. Now Logan's checking back in for the first time. And, you know, I told Greg, this is kind of like Superman coming out of a phone booth. The stage was set for North Clay. All of a sudden, somebody hit a 3 and it's 7. And now the place is going to be up for grabs. And it's probably 5 minutes to go in the game now, 4 or 5, when he started getting back into the game. And North Clay did a couple, you know, had the possession. I think they got a good look, and it just rolled. It was like a carnival rim. It rolled around and fell off, and they never could. I think they got it to 9, but then the Booty kid probably hit 6 of 8 free throws. Dietrich missed the front end of back-to-back 1-on-1s, and then all of a sudden, but North Clay couldn't get a bucket. It just wouldn't go down. They couldn't take advantage. So, you know, that game ended up then, you know, I guess, 15. It'll be interesting. I mean, Altamont and Dietrich now playing again at Dietrich. That game went down to the inside.
Oh, inside a minute.
Inside a minute was a tie game. Altamont, what I've seen of them and seen scores, you know, I saw them playing at the NTC. In my opinion, I saw them play St. Anthony the other night. I know they got a loss there, but in my opinion, Altamont has made strides as a team since they played earlier in the year. I think they're a little different team. I think now if they're healthy, you know, I know they've had, you know, some people getting banged up a little bit, but that's a good ball game. So, you know, should be interesting to see what happens there. But yeah, it was one of those games that just was not going to be North Clay's day.
And full disclosure, Josh Zink and I go back to our high school days. We were both graduates in '94 when we had him up down at Louisville, and they had a wonderful team, and got to know him after that a little bit better. But you know, that team, what a roller coaster of a year North Clay really had. And their losses, I would venture to say that that's probably one of the biggest margins of defeat that they had all year. I mean, their losses were always close games, you know, and then they beat some teams. That was a team that nobody would want to face on any given night, you know, even though their record wasn't great, and they challenged themselves, especially early with the teams that they played. And I credit them for that.
Well, in the first half of that game, Dietrich outscored them by 18 points from behind the arc. You know, they had an 18-point advantage on shooting threes and led by 5. So North Clay just kept hanging around and battling and just working for everything. And then Dietrich would come down and they'd be in a trap situation, and they'd do a skip pass, and here's a guy open, and bang. And they just kept making it.
So South Central, they got a win over St. Elmo Brownstown pretty convincingly, and that sets up your semifinals for Wednesday night. And I guess maybe we're starting with the most interesting regional first. Maybe that's
busiest
on my part, but man, you look at this, and it's Altamont and Diedrich in the first game, and then South Central and Sisney in the second game. And I will say that this was the first week of the season when I saw Sisney, but they're good.
Yes.
I would not feel comfortable making any predictions about this regional at this point. I think it's a very rare thing to see this much uncertainty about who might get into the championship game of a regional. It's pretty competitive. I mean, Altamont's the number 1 seed, and I don't. That's where they need to be. Okay, but as you mentioned, they played a tough game with Diedrich, and whoever they face, if they were to beat Diedrich or if Diedrich wins, whoever comes out of that other one, I don't know what to say about it other than there's going to be 3 good ball games in Diedrich over this next week.
South Central was the 4, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
And they actually were seated behind North Clay and Diedrich in the MTC.
Yeah. Yep. That's just kind of, but South Central's real. I mean, they're good.
They've got 25 wins, I believe, or knocking on the door of it.
Yeah. Let me look. 24 and no, I don't have their other one yet. Yeah. So they either 24 or 25. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And I mean, Blake Dorney's got them playing their style. You pretty much know what they're going to do. And it's just a challenge of, can you deal with their quickness and speed? And that'll be interesting with Sisney. I watched Sisney play on video, actually against North Clay from earlier in this year. And yeah, they're a legit team. So that 4-5 matchup is what you expect in a semifinal when you get there. But Altamont playing Diedrich at Diedrich, that's going to be tough. And you talk about different atmospheres. That Wednesday night is going to be.
Where are you going to put people?
That's my question.
All 4 schools will bring fans.
Mm-hmm.
And Diedrich is willing to host stuff. I mean, they do all the time. They are a good host, and they're a willing host. And the willingness is the thing that I think you run out of with a lot of the schools. A lot of schools just don't want to bother with it. They don't see the worthwhile. They don't see it as
hard to get people to take tickets. It's hard to get people to man a hospitality room. It's hard to go and the IHSA, the way they do the financials, when you host, unless you're having a huge amount of people attending, you don't make a dime.
There's really no benefit.
Now, if you're creative, then you can make money. But you've got some schools, you've got to, obviously you're paying your ticket. You're paying, and it's a chore.
But I say all that to say this, and remember, I'm from Neoga, so I got no room to talk. But that is not a big gym at Diedrich. I mean, it's not. And on one hand, that makes the atmosphere good because it's going to be packed. Okay, everybody that can fit in there is going to be in there, and it's going to be loud. But yeah, it's not a huge gym, so it'll be interesting to see how that all works out. But again, they do it all the time, and they figure out a way to make it work. And if it was,
you guys are going to be working together. I forgot where we were going Wednesday.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to this week.
I am too.
I'm looking forward to going to Tuscola with the girls. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But I think that those 2 games at Diedrich Wednesday night are going to be. And listen, I don't have to worry. My seat is reserved. I can walk up there to that balcony, and I know exactly where I'm going to go. So, so that's a fun one. Fun regional at Diedrich. Maybe not so much fun to play in, or to be the parent of a player who's playing in it, because there's going to be a lot of tense moments. But from a purely outside looking in perspective, great regional. Also feeding into that St. Anthony sectional. Of course, St. Anthony is down at Patoka, and they were the top seed in that regional. They got a pretty easy win over Mulberry. Well, I say a pretty easy win. I guess maybe I was a little surprised to see Mulberry Grove hang within 19, but they took care of business, and they're going to have Christ Our Rock Lutheran on Wednesday. But it seems like St. Anthony's got a pretty good path toward playing in a regional championship. I mean, I don't know how much we really need to say other than, the Bulldogs seem primed to get themselves into their own sectional. Is that fair?
Don't count out Coach Palmer at Carlisle.
Yeah.
I've known Andy back in the days of the going down to Breeze Mater Day Christmas tournament, and he does a good job. He's a Hall of Famer for a reason. I think he's a Hall of Famer. Yeah. And
if he's not, he probably will be.
Yeah. But that's the Patoka people still probably don't like the St. Anthony people from a couple of years ago when they knocked them off, and you may have water on your floor in your locker room. Who knows?
Centralia Christ Our Rock, I've been told, does have a couple of interesting players, a nice point guard and a pretty good big man. So there's a challenge there that you got to get ready for. But I agree with you. I mean, St. Anthony is in a good spot, and if they take advantage, then they have an opportunity to get to their own sectional, and they would love that.
Yeah, and Cody Rinker has a lot on his plate right now. We sat behind him in church today. His wife, I think if they don't have their baby today, she will have her baby tomorrow. And I said, well, as long as everything's done by Wednesday. And so, the Rinkers are.
Best of luck to them.
Expecting child number 4 here, maybe by the time people are watching this.
Well, first of all, I can't imagine having 4 kids and not losing my damn mind. But kudos to him for being able to figure that one out. But yeah, that would be something it'd be hard to concentrate on anything else at that time in life. But
timing's everything.
I think he'll probably find a way to figure it out.
His other 3 boys, energetic. I had so much fun sitting behind him in church today because
I can't imagine you wouldn't stir the pot up.
Yeah, what was the sermon about? What was the sermon about?
I really didn't.
Yeah, that's a good question, Dustin.
What was that, Dustin?
What was the sermon about? Were you paying attention? Were you being a good boy in church? Paying attention?
Yeah, it was about your neighbor.
That's pretty damn vague.
Well,
it was about God. Okay.
I knelt on time. I got up. I was in good shape. My daughter, she was trying to stir the pot a little bit. I will say that.
All right. So the other 2 regionals feeding into St. Anthony sectional. There's the Arcola regional. I'm not going to say too much because I really don't know much other than Tuscola is favored there, and they're a good team, but
I did have the opportunity to see Tuscola play Windsor Stew Straws at that CIC shootout. Yep, we went up early and watched. We got done announcing there at T-Town and left immediately and got there just in time to see that game. I was impressed with the way Windsor Stew Straws played against them. Disappointed in what I saw that game out of Tuscola. It's one game. I mean, so you take that.
Is there enough help with the Quinn kid?
Yeah, there's some players around. I mean, look, they're a 1 seed for a reason, and the Quinn could. But honestly, Quinn didn't do anything hardly against Windsor.
Yeah, I had somebody who saw him play. That's the second time Windsor's beat them, isn't it?
I don't think so.
I know at Christmas we were talking about. I remember Mike McCollum talking about them.
They beat
and Windsor Stew Straws. I saw them for the first time at the NTC, that 3rd place game, and I enjoyed watching them. And I'll tell you, they have taken on Bob Lockhart's very calm. The kids they don't get up too high during the game. Now they do with each other and congratulate and celebrate, but they're not trying to get the crowd involved, or they're not borderline taunting, clapping in someone's face. They're just, hey, we're here to do a job. And, Bob Lockhart has mellowed a lot at his age. I have to say that I don't remember sitting on the bench with that guy who was coaching that day. But They're good.
No,
Yeah,
they're
they-
very
They are, and they're deep.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Okay, there's two things there. Yeah, they play a lot of kids without liability. You know, I think 6 through 8 are not going to kill you. But also in terms of scoring, I mean, yeah, the Vonderheide kid is their leading scorer, but they've got on any given night 3 or 4 guys that could go out there and put 20 on you, and that's a luxury.
Austin Wittenberg dealt with an injury mid-season, and I think that's just me talking. But even coming back off of that, I think it set him back just a little bit. But I think he showed what he could do during the NTC tournament as far as putting up points. And boy, you know, offensively, they're a heck of a 1-2 punch. But you're right, Jordan Wittenberg can score. Bridges didn't play the other night against Altamont on that Friday night. He was one of their starters, but Cheney came in and shot well. And yeah, they've got all kinds of weapons, and they're going to be a force to deal with.
Yeah, they're
in their own regional.
And I'll tell you, the Vonderheide kid has soft hands for a big man. The amount of balls, you know, he was getting out of scrums, I thought North play. And I saw him play Altamont online, but it's not the same as seeing him in person. And yeah, I'm impressed. Soft hands, and he knows what to do with it when he gets.
That's the only thing soft about him.
Yes.
I mean, he can take it to you. But he's got good moves. He's fun to watch. But they're playing Neoga, and Neoga's a dangerous team that's well coached. You know, they're going to have to play them in that semifinal there on Wednesday. And that's another conference team that's played a lot of good competition, both in the conference and then outside of the conference. And I mean,
Newton only beat them by 2 Friday night.
Yeah, they gave Newton all they wanted, but in Neoga, they played Tuscola to 10 or 11
or
points.
12, something like that. Yeah.
And, you know, I know Neoga's had a little bit, they've had to kind of shuffle their lineup back up a little bit in midseason, which is never an easy thing to do. But, you know, it's that they can make things interesting, that's for sure. And I really think the other semifinal in that Windsor Stew Straws regional, you got Macon Meridian and Casey Westfield.
Yeah.
And now Macon Meridian is a good team, and they're actually the top seed in that regional. But Casey seems like they're playing some pretty good ball right now too. So there's some interesting things that could come out of there as well.
Casey had some kids transfer out before the school year started, before the season started. So I think expectations, Casey's going to be so good, and they struggled early. But I'll tell you what, Tommy Brandon knows what he's doing.
I was going to say, he's had a full season with this group now. And yeah, they're definitely a dangerous team at this point in time. And Macon Meridian, you know, they're a good team. Saw them play, and Altamont. That was one of the best games Altamont's played this year, and they wound up beating them by 19.
Yeah,
that margin was surprising. I had hoped Altamont could go up there and represent themselves well as part of the conference in that shootout. And full disclosure, Meridian had played Tuscola the night before to a double overtime game, got the victory there. So, you know, you can say what you want about that, but at the end of the day, it's 24 hours later, you're 16 to 18-year-old kids. There's no reason not to come and compete. And I'm not saying they didn't compete. It just maybe wasn't their day. And again, that's a snapshot on one day.
Well, and remember, you guys do 8-0 run right at the start of the third quarter, I think, to take that game from like 6 to 14. And then I was told it was just kind of stuck 14 and 11 the rest of the day. And the person I talked to said, you know, had we weathered the storm and not given up the 8-0 run, we'd taken our chances late. They shot it, I was told, awfully well early too. Hit a lot of threes early. So, you know, it's one of those things. Not going to be surprised if Windsor can get by Neoga. Windsor Stew Straws can get by Neoga if they can come out of there as a regional champ. I really wouldn't know.
All right, so that's a pretty good look at the 1A boys, and we'll move on to the bigger schools. T-Town and Effingham are the other two boys teams that we have left. I'm going to go Effingham first real quick. They're going down to Olney in a 3A regional. And I think this is Effingham's had a tough year, and we don't need to rehash that. We've talked about it. and Olney hadn't lost yet. So clearly,
which is a burden, to be honest.
yeah. In Effingham, I was there when Effingham and Olney played earlier this season, and I'll tell you, and I'm not just seeing, it's not just because I cover Effingham and probably leaned that way in that game. Effingham probably should have won that game. I mean, they played well enough for most of the game, and it just sort of got away from them late. I think Effingham with Volpe and Powell's back could make that a lot more interesting than I think the casual observer looking at that matchup might think it's going to be.
Well, St. Anthony played them, a 2 or 3 point game without Craig Froy.
Yeah.
Newton just played them a 2-point game. It's a case where I really feel Effingham has to go into the game saying, we got nothing to lose. This is a undefeated team. We're on their floor. I mean, if they're just totally relaxed and play, and here's the thing, the longer you hang around, the tighter things get with those kids from all. And it does. And it is. It just, but all of a sudden, you come out and start the game and only jumps to a 27-7 lead,
And that's what I've noticed with a lot of the games. Olney's been involved in tight games. And like you said, you named 3 or 4 of them just off the top of your head. But there is something to be said for winning those tight games.
Win's a win. And yes, you expect to win.
Coach Flanagan, he tremendous coach. I have such respect for what he's done over the years.
He's one of the best.
And I mean, he doesn't mind playing those tight games, low-scoring games.
He wants it to be a chess match. He loves playing chess.
And when you're one of the chess masters, why wouldn't you? And with that all being said, there's no reason why Effingham can't go down there and play with them.
Yeah,
and for a 2-8 matchup, it's probably going to be it could be an interesting one.
Interesting 2-8. It could be, right. And the thing with what Effingham has to do is change it to a game of Chinese checkers, not chess. And that's my only time I had coach against Coach Flanagan, I finally said, okay, and at halftime released the hounds, and we did it that way. Went from a chess match, which Rob's a much better chess player than I am. So
yeah, I mean,
keep that up.
For Effingham, it's just got to be this. It's been a season that probably hasn't been a whole lot of fun at times. But you could, you could make you could dramatically change the way you feel about it when it's all said and done. If you could go out there in a regional and knock off an undefeated team, I mean, that would put a pretty good taste in your mouth, no matter how the rest of it went. So that'll be a fun one to watch. Fun one to watch.
And nothing to lose, like Mike said.
It's like the end of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
And one of the things that sticks out to me from this season was after one of those games, Coach Obie Farmer came up for his post-game interview, and I know it's got to get tiresome for him to come up and basically say the same things after every game, but he said to me before he put on the headset, he said, man, I hate to lose. I just hate to lose. And I know that he's going to they're going to put from the sideline too, they're going to throw everything in the kitchen sink at this game to try to go out with guns blazing. So looking forward to seeing how that one turns out. Okay. And finally, the T-Town boys, they're playing Shelbyville Wednesday night in a regional semifinal up at Arthur Lovington, Atwood Hammond. If they get past that one, which quite honestly they should, they're a much better team than Shelbyville.
Shelbyville has played better as of late.
Yeah.
And I saw them early to mid-season. They've got pieces, and you could see that they were going to develop.
Yeah.
But everything that you're saying is true. The Topolis should be able to take care of business.
And if they do, and I think probably the bigger question is if Newton can get past Paris, right. and Newton again is seated higher than Paris and should be. But right. I guess what I'm getting at is that you could have an intriguing matchup in the championship game of that regional, which would be a rubber match between T-Town and Newton. I hate
both teams lost on their home floor in that matchup.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to count too many chickens, you know what I'm saying, because things have to happen before that matchup comes. But I'd be lying if I said that wasn't the matchup that I hope to see. I mean, from my perspective, that's, for a lot of reasons, would just be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and Matt and I did that game that night at Christmas, and that was 2 games. The game really changed dramatically. James Nieberg was dominant.
Yeah, first quarter,
and a minute or two into the second quarter, had 10 points, was aggressively going to the hole, using his athleticism, had 10 points, and then got hurt. And
then the Wolf boy from Newton,
the Wolf kid came off the bench, and they were was up double digits in the third quarter. And the Wolf kid said, "Jump on my back." The one thing, and I'll preface this statement: Troy Behrman and I are very good friends. Okay, I've known Troy a long time. We sat on the bench together, T-Town together for a few years. I've seen and talked to people that have seen Newton more than I have since then. I think T-Town has improved as a group more as the season has gone on than Newton has. And I'm not saying Newton peaked at Christmas. They just played only a 2-point game here and had a shot to win at the buzzer. But I think they've had some closer games than I thought they would have. And I had someone tell me they I don't want to say they kind of hit a little lull. But sometimes postseason snaps you right out of it as well. But I just think what I've seen, and I haven't seen T-Town a lot, but what I have seen, they look a little different now.
Well, they had to learn how to play without Cade Altoff. And I mean, he impressed me at the beginning of the season with the things that he was doing on the court. Not that I mean, to be fair, I guess I'm going to say that I didn't necessarily expect that out of him. And I hope he doesn't take that as an insult or anything. But I just was really impressed with what I had seen from here, from last year to this year, and what he was doing offensively, defensively, and that sort of thing. So you lose a player like that, that's a key part of your program, then the other players kind of had to learn and adjust their roles. And I think that's the improvement part of it that you're seeing from T-Town within the season.
And I think my expectations from Caden was, man, this kid can guard. He's just not going to do much offensively. And now he was becoming a threat, was a scoring threat, was aggressive using athleticism, getting rebounds, going to the basket. So, and I think the other thing, I think they became so reliant on Brendan.
Oh, shooting.
Brendan, save, almost like famous. James is now being more aggressive. I think you're seeing the Gaddis kid, the Custer kid, even the Nieberg kid. There's been a few kids now playing off the bench. Some of the younger kids have been getting some minutes. Not like they're going to come in and score 20, no, but minutes, and they've got a little more depth, I think, to help them down the road. And I just think they are getting themselves in position to play better. I mean,
and it showed. A lot of the games they've had.
Well, and I look at their path, and I'd be scared if I was anybody else right now, looking T-Town down. I mean, T-Town has that going for it any year, to be perfectly honest with you, because it's T-Town, right? Like there's still that stigma there, right? Like you got to play T-Town, and you're not the sixth man is the letters across the chest. But
and the crowd.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, that's probably actually bigger in a lot of cases. But
when they travel, if you have to hear, and I always called it the T-Town roar as a coach, you hated to hear. When you hear that big moment in the game, it's like it. You're like, holy crap.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just there's a lot of people and that they're excited, but they know what they're watching, and they
understand the context of whatever just happened.
Yeah, they've seen the big moments, and when the game turns and when something happens that might that might be the end of you, and they smell that blood in the water. They've got a lot of experience with that. So
I've only seen it backfire on them once, where you've heard that, and then they didn't close out the game.
yeah, I might
I
even
heard it 3 times in the same game. That's, yeah, you talk about
But
shell shock.
But I do think Newton is a very good ball club, and they compete hard.
They do.
And so I saw them early. I saw them obviously at the Christmas tournament, and then I watched them one other time. And I'm with Dustin on this. T-Town Newton's what I want to see out of that. Nothing against any other teams.
No, as a fan, that's the game you want to see. And remember, Newton played T-Town and Lincoln Way East in the same day.
Yeah.
And that's why they came to our Christmas tournament.
And held their own.
that. Oh yeah.
I mean, obviously.
Yeah, their third place game, they could hit water falling out of a boat, but they were also tired. But yeah, that was, but it was almost, can they get back to that level of play? And some people said they're going to have to get back to it because they've just ebbed a little bit.
Well, I don't mean to disparage Newton or anything, but I do look at T-Town as the team. Really, I look at all the teams in that sectional, across the other regionals, feeding into Flora, and T-Town's a scary team. And
oh yeah.
And
well, they're the number 1 seed for a reason.
Yeah, and Flora also, your mileage may vary on the gym at Flora, but calling the game there, I love calling the game there. So
it's a great gym. I just don't feel it's a sectional gym. I mean, for 2A, I think you say, okay,
and there's
Robinson, Newton, Lawrenceville, U3 share.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say. I don't know what I'll go.
But they got to be willing. You never know who you put in for
it. I know.
All right. I think we've done a pretty good job of breaking down boys basketball, right? I think, and obviously with the girls side of things, their regionals are done. Although it took some regionals a little longer to get played than they anticipated because of this weather last week. By the way, all told, it kind of all hit the fan this week with the weather, and it didn't muck things up as bad as I thought it might. With I don't know.
Just don't write anything in pen for Thursday night. Just tell them.
Okay. Well, I don't.
I'm just saying.
I'm gonna try and stay optimistic.
Yep.
I'm becoming weather nerd since I've got.
So you just added weather to the term.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly where I want to start with girls, but I think I might start with the T-Town girls because they find themselves in a Monticello sectional that is friggin' loaded. Okay. Boy, I'm pretty happy with where I'm going to end up Tuesday night, but I also wish that I could see the 2 games that are going to happen in Monticello. Sectional semifinals first between Pana and Marshall. They'll play at 6:00 Tuesday night, and then T-Town and Paris play each other in the second game. And I'm trying to think of sectionals that the T-Town girls have ended up in because they do that frequently in case you haven't been paying attention. But it's been a while since they've been in one that's as loaded as this. I think back to the one that they hosted back when Katrina Swingler was playing in aerial hockey, and they had Paris in there, and Martinsville was still a 2. I think was Martinsville a 2A school. Then they had the Danky. No, maybe
I don't
not.
know if they would have been. Unless they were. They wouldn't have been co-opting with anybody.
I just seem to remember the Danky girl that went to Illinois coming into.
There was only 2 classes then.
Maybe that was still.
Yeah, you still only had 2 classes.
Okay, and Alney was in there.
Brittany Johnson.
Yeah, and listen, I don't know that you don't have the star power like individually in this sectional, but when you look at the quality of the teams and the seasons they've had, and what kind of basketball you could expect from these games, I mean, It's just what I thought. It's immediately where my mind went when I saw this, because Pana and Marshall, really good teams. Paris and T-Town, really good teams. Paris getting a lower seed than T-Town. Paris has had just a whale of a season, I wouldn't want to pick between any of them. Pretty good little 4-team tournament here.
Well, the thing you look at, in their quarterfinals, or in their semifinals, most of them just had to play semifinals. They were dominant. All 4 of the teams that made it to this point, winning the regionals into the sectionals, were dominant with their wins.
Mm-hmm.
Admittedly, I haven't seen T-Town yet as far as their girls. That's unusual. My schedule a little more limited this year than normal, as far as games that I broadcast. So I haven't had the opportunity to see the Lady Shoes, but I am definitely looking forward to that matchup with Paris. And you're right, Paris has had such a tremendous season. Boy, someone really good is going to have their season come to a close.
Paris beat them by 2, Dustin, early in the season at Paris.
51-49 on December 20th. And that was a stretch where T-Town had, they had played Pana a couple weeks earlier.
Didn't Pana beat them by 2?
Lost to them in overtime by a single point.
Okay, by 1.
But I do think, first of all, Lori Thompson, we've talked about a lot of good coaches on this show so far, and there's another one. She's been through the wars, and she knows how to guide a team into this part of the season. And there's an X factor there, but also, I just feel like T-Town, looking at how they dominated in the regional, you feel like hopefully they're just peaking at the right time. And another thing about T-Town is, we were talking before the show, we haven't been able to do an Attaboy award for a T-Town girl all year. But part of the reason for that is because you never know who it is that's going to beat you that night from T-Town. They have very balanced scoring, and that's just that's kind of a Lori Thompson team that is, nobody scores a buttload of points, and they play good hard defense. And if they do that, they're going to be a tough out.
Yeah, no, that's the one thing, defensively. Defense shouldn't take a night off, so you're going to still be in the game. You can't focus. Okay, they've got this one girl, we can really shut her down. Paris has 2 really good players. Okay, we can really concentrate on these 2 because they score probably 70% of Paris's points. I think they both average close to 20 points a game. Can be a disadvantage. But the thing with T-Town, they they got beat by Pana at Pana in overtime. Yeah, Paris beat them by 2 at Paris. Breeze Central, I think it was Central, really spanked them. It was a day after they played somewhere on a Friday night, then went down to Breeze Central on a Saturday. But yeah, you look at their losses.
Yeah,
they I guarantee you, quote, strength of schedule, they have a leg up on everyone in this section.
Oh, sure. Listen, Paris challenged itself non-conference wise. I think they brought in a pretty good team that actually beat them in the championship of their own Thanksgiving tournament. And then they went up to that State Farm holiday tournament, but the little Illini, but the little Illini conference for girls, it is what it is. It's just, it hasn't been a real big year for that league. So you're going to stack up a pretty fair number of one-sided wins, with the exception of Marshall. Marshall was the only other team in that conference that really was just, Robinson was pretty good, but I think it was Paris, Marshall, and then, a lot of teams that Paris was just beating without a whole lot of trouble. And sometimes I think you can get into this point in the season, and those losses and those close games you've played help the cream rise to the top. And that's not to say that I think that it's some given that T-Town is going to beat Paris, but I do think that it's at least a point in the Lady Shoes' favor. So.
Yeah, and the quality of competition means a lot throughout the season in my mind. You challenge yourself night in, night out. Topless has the opportunity to set their schedule being independent as best they can. And, you know, that's why they, I mean, might not have the record some years on occasion, but then they always show up in postseason and here they go.
Yeah, I mean, they're
You know?
they're 21-7 right now. And I guarantee that if you got Lori Thompson to talk candidly with you, she'd start telling you about how probably 5 of those 7, at least, they shouldn't have lost. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
But the fact of the matter is, win them or lose them, those games provide you with situations that are going to come in handy when you start getting into a sectional of the magnitude of the one that they're about to play in. You know, looking at who else is still alive girls wise in our area. I mean, I guess it pretty much, I want to do real quick. Effingham washed out. They lost in their regional championship to Mount Vernon, but, you know, had a little trouble shooting, but really could have won that game. And 4 Apollo Conference teams were playing for a regional championship that night, Friday night, and 3 of them won. And Effingham had a very real chance to make it 4. And Jeff, I mean, I think that Effingham to win 21 games this year is a pretty nice accomplishment, because that league was, and we've talked about it before, but that league was so heavy. And I did the math. The Apollo was 80-40 in its non-conference games this year, and 23 of those losses came between Mount Zion and Charleston, okay, who had down years. So you take them out. I mean, it's a tough league to play in, and I think Effingham should be really proud to have gone 6-6 in that conference and to have won as many ball games as it did. So I just didn't want the show to go by without at least throwing that out there.
No, it's a very valid point. And we talk about how tough the Apollo is for girls. We talk about how tough the NTC is for girls, how balanced it is. You know, Effingham, you know, they had to deal with some circumstances they weren't ready for coming into the season too, with Annie Frost, her family moving to Florida. You know, that was a player that they had kind of been counting on from the junior high days on. And Coach Schaefer just, I mean, he shows why he's a Hall of Fame coach by, you know, finding a way to get these girls to play together and get a lot of wins in a tough conference.
Yep, a lot of ball games won for Jeff, and he made sure. I know when I interviewed him after that game, he pretty much, you know, I know that he talked about how you get to this point in your career and you start reflecting and realizing you're not going to do it forever. But he was quick to hedge that with, you know, but not to say that I'm going anywhere just yet. So, you know, right. Anybody who's keeping an eye on that situation, I think you could probably expect to see him back for reasons that we don't have to necessarily get into, but he's putting his name, he's etching his name in the history books at Effingham High School, I would say. I think that's
he should early next year.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And we'll all be watching for that. That'll be good. Then as far as who else is left, I mean, the NTC girls, you know, there were some St. Anthony played a regional final against Cowden-Herrick Beecher City, a team that had beaten them in the regular season, but then St. Anthony turned around and beat them pretty handily, honestly, in the 3rd place game of the NTC girls tournament. So they got a 3rd matchup for the Cumberland regional final, and St. Anthony got the win there 61-57. So they get back to a sectional, which, you know, Aaron Rios this is his 3rd year there coaching. I know that Bart had been able to get them some regional titles while he was there, but it had been a minute since they were able to advance back to this level. So that's good. And I like St. Anthony's team. I like them a lot. I like to watch the kids play. In that Cumberland regional, Lucy Fearday, speaking of kids I like to watch play, she crossed over the 1,000-point plateau. So that's 2 kids that they've had do that this year. Riley Guy did it fairly early in the season. And Lucy, Riley's a senior, Lucy's a junior, and she did it against Diederich in the semifinals. And the thing about Lucy is that she'll put up 16 points and 8 or 9 rebounds, and you'll get to the end of the game and not realize that she'd done it.
Mhm.
But she does it every night. She averages 17 points a game somewhere in there.
Yeah, that championship game, she had a quiet
Yeah.
16 or 17, whatever she had. And that game just became in the second half. St. Anthony just dominated the glass on both ends of the floor.
Yeah.
I'll tell you another kid that had a great game for the Bulldogs was Grace Karalevich.
Yeah.
She just, found seams and got some big buckets for them. And then the Vonderhyde, is it
Stacy.
Stacy? She comes in and takes over on the point of their little 1-2-2, and she's a pain in the butt. She got her hands on a lot of balls. She had probably 3 huge offensive rebound putbacks in the late third, fourth quarter as well. Just, one of the smallest girls on the floor, shot goes up and everybody's watching, and bang, bang, she'd stick it back in. So
Plays a lot like Big Brother then, Samuel.
I didn't know that was Samuel, brother, sister.
This is why we get Matt on the show. He knows things.
She's quicker than Sam.
But you got good hands.
Yeah. She gets after it.
Yeah.
Her and Karalevich kind of, she's a little quicker than Grace on top. So she causes a lot of problems.
Yeah, I like I said, I really like St. Anthony's, the way their team is put together. They've got some more than one kid who can score, which is always a plus, right? Like there's not that one person that you can just key on and take them away. And plus one of them is kind of more of a post player and one's a guard. So,
threats inside and out.
Yeah. But then also, you talk about role players, I watch Abby Hatton sometimes, and she doesn't score a lot of points, but there's a kid who's a few years younger than me at Neoga by the name of Preston Robinson, who he could get under your skin. Okay. And that was his main job, right? Was to just kind of poke you a little bit and see if he could piss you off a little bit. And I think Abby Hatton has that in her. I would guess that opposing coaches don't always appreciate it, but she's a hard-nosed player and a good kid for them to have. That's not going to get, she's not going to get like a ton of accolades because it's just not a lot of points there. But you got to have kids like that on a team, I guess is what I'm saying. Doing little jobs that make a bigger difference than the casual observer understands. So,
and the Kimber coming in, spelling her primarily.
Yeah,
got more and more minutes, and it's nice to have another 5'11", 6'1" girl to come in and give you good time like that. It really is. Riley Guy was like 1 of 7 on threes. Now Dustin, the night we saw her, she couldn't miss.
I have seen her play games where she couldn't miss. When they came to Neoga and played this year, I was watching that one as a fan instead of a broadcaster, and I was beginning to get a little frustrated with it because she was on fire that night. So St. Anthony that they play Tri-County at the Tuscola sectional, the first game there Tuesday night. And I've seen Tri-County. I've followed the Cumberland girls team pretty closely this year, for personal reasons. Good friend of mine coaching that team. And, so I've seen them play. Tri-County is good, okay, but Tri-County has been good for a while. And I would say that this team here, probably not quite where some of those other teams are. But, that's going to be a quality game. I could certainly see St. Anthony coming out with a win. I could see it, not guaranteeing it, but it should be fun. And then Neoga's going up to that sectional as well. And Matt and I were at Altamont yesterday. Neoga and Altamont played for the championship of that regional. And that was another case where teams from the NTC were playing each other for the third time in a rubber match to decide a regional championship. And Neoga ended up winning by 16 points, which I wasn't expecting at all because their previous 2 games needed one of them needed double overtime, and the other one was decided by 2 points. But Neoga's back in a sectional for the first time in 10 years, and played pretty well yesterday, I thought.
They played a good ball game, solid approach. Took care of the ball with the exception of one quarter when Alabama made their run in the second quarter, and they got themselves within 3 at halftime. But I can't help but be impressed with what Kim Romack's done with the Neoga program since he's taken over. And not that it wasn't in good shape when she took it over, but sometimes that's a challenge to maintain that. And she's done a great job with their program. She's got a real nice player in Sydney Richards. I really enjoy watching her play, but there's more than her to that team. And they have size, which that's always a big advantage, but their guards do a lot of good things as well, in particular on the defensive end, and they can get some points too.
Yeah, and they had their hands full, the guards did, because, listen, we've talked about Grace Nelson on this show a few times. Sure. Altamont's got a special player there, okay? I mean, the kind that doesn't come along very often. And I think for them, they're a scary team to think about for the next 2 years because Altamont didn't have a senior on the roster, okay? They started a lineup that was 4 sophomores and a freshman yesterday. And the big key for them is just going to be, I think, to grow everybody. Grace Nelson's a great player. There's certainly things that she will be able to get better at as she matures. And then, those other players that were in the starting lineup and coming off the bench yesterday, it's interesting to think about what they can get better at in the next 2 years and how tough they're going to be to play against, the rest of the time they're in high school.
Those are all valid points. And the thing that Altamont just does not have is size. There is just not, Grace is listed as 5'10", and she's the tallest player on the team. Everyone else, as you mentioned, basically a sophomore, 5'8" and under. And they do have possibly a kid or two coming up as freshmen next year. We'll just have to see how that develops. But they've dealt with it this whole season, and they've got some kids who stepped up and accepted challenges of being inside, even though they're undersized. But yeah, Altamont finished a great year. CHBC finished a great year, losing to St. Anthony. And so they still have talent coming back too.
Absolutely. The Heckert girl, their leading scorer, she's going to be back.
She hit some big buckets in that game.
Yeah, Gracie Heckert is, you could tell just by looking at her, even when she's not playing in the game, that she's going to be an intense competitor. She just she has it written all over her that she's there for business, I think, would be
a freshman that played well too.
Yeah. Yeah. The NTC and Neoga, they've got a couple of seniors on their roster this year, but, kids that are going to be tough to replace for more intangible reasons than because of maybe necessarily, consistently putting points on the board, but really still they're going to be a handful for the next year or two as well. So the NTC on the girls' side, St. Anthony's going to have a lot back too. They're losing some seniors, but as every team does, but they've got a lot of good players coming back too. So I'm really interested to watch this conference beyond this year. But Neoga's going to play Tuscola up at Tuscola, and they've already beaten Tuscola once this year. They played in the championship of the Monticello Holiday Hoopla tournament and beat them by 13 points. And so that's nice because you don't get, with that regional championship being moved from Thursday to Saturday, you don't get you get one practice, okay? Instead of 3, right? You would have had 3. You would have been able to practice Friday, Saturday, and Monday, maybe Sunday. I don't know. Some teams do that. I don't know if they talk about it too much, but it's got to be nice to have some tape on a team when you're getting ready to face them. I know they'll change things up, but it's has to be useful. I don't know. That sectional to me, very interesting as well. Any permutation of the championship game there is going to be fascinating and a pretty good ball game. So I don't know. Am I missing anything? Am I missing anything about local teams? I think we pretty much got it covered.
I think you've touched on it all. Where did the girls play their Super 1A?
I
Because
will
it
tell
always
you.
used to be at Salem, but I don't know where it is. Is
Uh,
it a Wayne City?
I don't know that. I'm looking it up now.
Somewhere I saw where Wayne City hosted.
No, Vandalia.
Oh, that's a great place for Super Saiyan.
Wait a minute. No, that's 2A. That's 2A. I'm sorry. That was 2A.
Yeah. Well, it could be
It is
both.
Wayne City.
Sometimes they.
It is Wayne City.
Okay.
See?
That's interesting. I don't. Yeah. I mean, didn't I feel like did South Central have a girls sectional or super sectional final not too long ago? I feel like sometimes they ask some pretty small venues to do that.
Well, it was always at Salem.
Yeah.
Doubleheader there. Yeah.
I just feel like I remember not in the too distant past that there was a venue that really surprised me. But yeah, Wayne City. Well, I hope we get a chance. I've never been to Wayne City. Full disclosure, I'd like to get a chance to go there with one of those NTC schools.
You have to ask George Flexter for directions.
Well, that would require talking to George Flexter.
Yeah.
Good point. Good point. Yeah,
Really
probably not.
sure.
I'd Google it then.
Oh man, I think we're just kidding. I don't know. We're like 75% kidding.
50.
All right.
I get the feeling we're about to wrap things up, and I know you got your stuff to do. I do want to mention one thing that I haven't mentioned yet. And we were talking about my broadcasting, how it got going and that sort of thing. But your dad, Larry, was a big influence on me. Even before I was announcing games, just listening to him and Greg broadcast games. And Larry helped me, even though we were competitors. He would listen to a broadcast that I was doing. Maybe, his game got over earlier than mine. And he'd be like, hey, you need to do this or that. Main thing he say is you need to say the score more often. I'm like, Larry, I've said it a bunch.
We listen to games on the radio and he'll get so mad. We're listening to somebody on the radio. Hey, I want to know the score.
And he says, you can't say it enough.
Right.
And so, things like that. And working with him on schedules and that sort of thing. I always appreciated that. And then when he retired, the opportunity to work with Greg at Premier Broadcasting, they asked me at the Charleston Holiday Tournament the last year that he was actually broadcasting if I'd be interested in it. And I was like, yep. I mean, it was a no-brainer to move over there and work with Greg. And I'm probably not the easiest guy to work with sometimes. I have my own opinions on things.
Well, sometimes we get in discussions during timeouts. So
Well,
I have to tell you, no, that wasn't a foul.
well,
I guess that was a foul. But other than that, you're pretty good.
but I appreciate Greg tolerating me at times and helping me along and being a broadcast partner since 2004. I guess 2004 season was the first year I did games with him, if I'm remembering this.
2005, I bet.
Okay, could be.
Because Dad would have quit in 4. Because he didn't do, when I was the head coach at St. Anthony, he was no longer. And that was 05 to 6 or 7.
Well, if he retired in the summer or before, then I would have been doing fall basketball. I don't know when he.
Yeah, 04, 05.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah.
Because he came in and pinch hit. He actually did.
Yeah.
He did my last win when we beat Olney in the sectional. He actually was doing color. I don't even know who he did it with.
It could have been with me.
Maybe it was with you because
It could have been.
he did the post-game interview.
Yeah.
Which I was like, oh, really?
Well, actually, it probably wasn't with me. I don't remember for sure. I remember being at Olney for one of your games for sure.
Well, I was only there 2, and the other one was T-Town.
Yeah, I was at that one. I know that. But it was a pleasure to get the chance to work with your dad a few times as well. It was a big thrill for me. So I appreciate what Larry did for me, what Greg did for me. That can't be said enough.
Yeah, they're both great about positive feedback. But it'll let you know what you're doing wrong. I think that's fair. But it tickles
Doing
me.
a constructive. They do it in a very constructive manner. Unlike when you're like not mowing the yard the right height, then it's not very.
That's a problem.
Yeah, it's not constructive.
I just know that there have been a couple of times where I've gotten a text from Larry Wilson after a game saying, "Oh, that was a great job. I really thought that was," and that'll make you feel like you're floating.
Oh.
To hear it from him, because I mean, he's very understandably thought highly of by pretty much everybody who cares about sports around here. So
no higher praise in my book when he sends a text or whatever, like you say, hey, good job with that broadcaster. You did this. That was really good. I always appreciate it. It's always a pleasure.
Now, is this the same guy that sent me a text during the ice storm and said he needed a half gallon of milk? Okay. I want to make sure we're talking about the same guy.
Yep. It's all about perspective.
Because he will get a laugh out of that, because he and I have had several discussions in the last 2 weeks about that. I said, hey, get your stuff.
All right, we got one piece of business left to take care of. We're going to get us an Attaboy name this week, and sometimes these things just sometimes they sort of take care of themselves. Sometimes I come into this and I don't have any ideas that I just feel great about, but then sometimes the kid scores her 1,000th point of her career in a game, in a regional game, no less, where she kind of put the team, where she played really well and was a dominant force in the first half, especially. And she makes it easy on you. And that was the case this week. Lucy Fearday, again, a junior at St. Anthony, already crossing the 1,000-point plateau. And to think that this isn't even sport number one for Lucy. Basketball is just kind of something she does to stay. I don't want to say does to stay busy, but we all know that she's just a hell of a softball pitcher but a pretty good basketball player too. And her dad was a good basketball player too. One of the best players to ever come through Neoga. So I guess I shouldn't be surprised. But again, we talked about it, and it's not just that she scores a bunch of points, but that the way she does it. I've had two different coaches talking to me about her recently that just say they really appreciate the way she goes about the game. You don't notice her until you look at the box score sometimes. And I think that's a pretty good compliment. Some players like to like all eyes on them, and you can tell. And she's just very businesslike in the way she goes about it. So kudos to Lucy. She's been a fun kid to watch this season, and for that, that wasn't very loud, was it?
No.
Wasn't very loud. Someday
when you choose the Attaboy, your timing is perfect. When I do it, there's that pregnant pause and
well, here's the problem is that I didn't have the program open on my computer that I wanted to use for it this time. And so it wasn't perfect. Otherwise it would have sounded like this. That's a little better. But regardless, Lucy will get you. We thank the folks at Joe's Pizza and also at Pizza Man for sponsoring this, letting us do a little something to recognize kids from around the area for what they've done this season. And there's so many players. There's probably performances or good stories that we've missed, and I do apologize for that, but I just want to try to do what we can. We see a lot of ball. And so recognizing the kid here and there, I think that's nice. And hopefully they appreciate it. And we'll have to might have to get a 2-for-1 on the photo op with her and Izzy Hackman, because we haven't had a chance to get to Izzy yet. But also I might be in the same gym with both of them later on this week. So I know they'll have a sectional game to play, and they probably will have other things.
I'll be focused on that a little more.
You want me to try to get to a practice tomorrow and get this taken care of for you?
If you feel called, I'm not going to complain. But if push comes to shove, I'll run her down the same way that I did Logan Heil earlier this year, and I'll weather the confused look on his face as I try to explain to him what this is. And he's just like, I don't really know who you are or what we're doing, but you're giving me $10. So, I'll smile for the picture. But if you get that done, that'd be great. So congratulations.
I may be more photogenic than you. That may be why.
That's a valid point. I don't take good pictures. So we've got that. All right. Well, Matt, thanks for hopping on with us. You got to get up early in the morning. So we're probably pushing you past your bedtime at this point.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to be on with you. To be honest, when I came over here, I thought I'd be on for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and I'd duck out. But you guys tolerated me this whole time. I appreciate it.
Well, go home, get some sleep. We might have to, during the basketball season, we might have to start thinking about should Matt Robinson be more of a regular when we talk about the local stuff, because this guy knows a thing or two. He knows a thing or two. He's pretty knowledgeable. So thanks to Matt. Mike,
it's fun. The coaches are all good to work with, so that always helps a lot too.
Yeah. We've got some pretty interesting ideas for guests coming up, so stay tuned for that. And some more basketball to talk about. Teams are dwindling, but we're going to have at least another couple more weeks worth of local teams to talk about. So be checking that out. Thanks to everyone who subscribed, and we'll be talking to you next week. See you later, guys.
Yep.